Would you try to move the webcam so that it is like more facing this way? Oh, perfect. I think that's perfect. Thank you, dude. All right, cool. Well,
Hello and welcome into another episode of 8Sports Nightcap here on WRSCNow.com, on our Facebook page, our YouTube page. Thanks so much for joining in. If this is your first time tuning in to a Nightcap, we just kind of recap what happened this past week, talk a little ball, and kind of preview what's going to happen this week in terms of the sports world in Virginia. I'm joined today by my producer for this thing, Will Gonzalez. Will, welcome in. Thanks for being here. We'll talk with Will later on in the show about some of the top storylines of things happening in the world of sports. But let's go ahead and jump right into it. The action from this past weekend. We'll start with Virginia Tech because the Hokies are rolling. They've now won 3 ACC games in a row. They're 5-3. They're one away from bowl eligibility after they take down the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets 21-6 in what was the Kyron Drone show, right? He threw for a touchdown pass. He ran for a touchdown pass, and he even caught a touchdown pass from Jalen Lane, as well as the Hokies looked a little sloppy against the Yellow Jackets, but they do coming away with a hard-earned victory. They punted the ball 10 or 11 times in this game versus Georgia Tech. It was like the second or third most punts Tech has had since 1970. Just a crazy Saturday for the Hokies. They started strong. They struggled to move the ball. They kind of had to have these gadget plays to get points on the board, and it worked, and the defense stood tall, came up with multiple fourth down stops, and they got a much-needed victory to kind of keep themselves in the fight for an ACC championship game appearance. That's definitely not off the table. I was doing some math earlier today, and when you look at it, Virginia Tech is definitely in this fight if they can continue to play like they've been playing. This is a game where maybe Virginia Tech teams in the past lose. They couldn't really get much going against one of the best defensive fronts in the ACC in Georgia Tech, and they were still able to come away with a win, which I think said a lot. The big storyline in this one was Bachel Tootin got injured in this game, rushed for 79 yards. That was a big scare, I think, for a lot of people. Of maybe it was a high ankle sprain. Was he going to miss weeks? Was he going to be back for Clemson? And the news came out today out of Coach Pry's mouth that he's probable to play this Saturday against Syracuse on the road. And we got highlights from this game, so let's check it out. Let's go to Lane Stadium and see some of the highlights from the Hokies showdown against Georgia Tech. Another sellout. It was homecoming in Lane Stadium. Maroon effect. Check out the crowd there, looking great. Benji Gosnell with an early touchdown to get things going for the Hokies. Another big week for him. He's really becoming one of the best players for the Virginia Tech Hokies in terms of receiving and how well he's been. Kyron Drones on the receiving end of a touchdown pass, his first career reception, and it was the first time in program history that a quarterback rushed for a touchdown, threw for a touchdown, and caught a touchdown pass as well. So big day there for Kyron Drones. The defense came up with 2 interceptions, which was much needed, and the Hokies win what was just a gut-busting game. It really was a fight for Virginia Tech. Here's the touchdown walk-in from Kyron Drones. And I think something you have to bring up is just the support Tech has gotten this year. Another sellout. They stayed for the whole game this time around. An impressive showing from the Hokies as they get it done at home over the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. And it now sets them up to go on the road to take on a Syracuse team. The Hokies have not won in the Carrier Dome, which is now JGM Wireless Dome. Of course, we all know it as the Carrier Dome. Since 2000, that was you think back to Michael Vick playing on that AstroTurf. That was the last time Virginia Tech beat Syracuse on the road. You think back to the last time they played them, that was 2016. It was that Justin Fuente's good season, his first season at Virginia Tech. The Hokies had a lot of momentum going into that game at Syracuse. It looked like Virginia Tech could be a contender for the college football playoff that season. And they go on the road and they lose to Syracuse. It's not an easy place to play. No doubt about it. The Hokies are going to have to go in there and play hard, play their best, and see if they can continue to keep this thing rolling, because if they beat Syracuse, Clemson comes to town, and if you beat Clemson, you're setting yourself up for an opportunity to play for an ACC championship if some things go your way. So this weekend, definitely don't overlook the Syracuse Orange. They played really poorly against Pittsburgh. They turned the ball over too many times, and the final score in that game does not really show you how good Syracuse is. Syracuse is a talented football team. I don't think last week's score versus Pittsburgh really give you an idea of how good they are. And hopefully the Hokies don't overlook a Syracuse Orange team that has 5 wins this season. Syracuse is a talented team. They've won a lot of good games, and they got a first-year head coach that's got things going in the right direction. But before we move on to the next game, let's kind of put a bow on this Georgia Tech game for Virginia Tech and hear what Brent Pry had to say following the Hokies' big win this past Saturday, 21-6 over Georgia Tech.
We get down there, we got no blood in the water. We'll get the touchdown. I thought the creativity, the way we created some explosive plays today. Jay Lane throwing one to KD, Benji wide open on the play act. That's what we had to do. Maybe we couldn't earn it and just drive like we've done the last couple of weeks, but we were able to hit the plays that merited some points, and that certainly was important in the game.
So there you have a big win for Virginia Tech. They moved to 5-3. They're 1 win away from bowl eligibility. Coming into the season, I know the expectations were so high for Virginia Tech, but if you looked at what Brent Pry inherited when he took over this program, it was a 3-win team in year 1 for him. Last year they get 6 wins. I think realistically for a lot of people, if the Hokies got 8 wins this year, it was still a step in the right direction. And they got Syracuse, Duke, Clemson, and UVA left on their schedule. They're going to get to 8 wins. And the way that things are rolling in Blacksburg is pretty impressive. They have a lot of senior-led talent. I know I don't want to look too far into the future, but if Brent Pry can continue this success and continue this momentum, it'll be interesting to see where this program can go in the future. The recruiting's still not quite there yet for Virginia Tech. I kind of you kind of are left wanting more out of the recruiting for the Hokies. They haven't really been able to bring that much talent in terms of, stars, that 4 and 5 stars. We haven't seen that many. A lot of recruits were in town against Georgia Tech, including the number 1 receiver out of the transfer portal was in town for that game as well. And a lot of guys from Huguenot were at the game Saturday as well. And so the recruiting's starting to get there. The Hokies are winning games. If they can go on the road and beat Syracuse, look out. Lane Stadium's going to be rocking come next Saturday against Clemson. And I'm sure that'll be the primetime game, and there'll be a lot riding on that game as well. But the moral of the story here, Hokies win an ugly one. That's something they haven't been able to do a lot of times over the past couple of seasons is win these gut-busting punts left and right. I mean, it reminded you of the old 2007, 2008 Hokies where it was all defense and punts, and they got it done, and that's what matters. They still just have one ACC loss, and now they turn their attention to Syracuse. All right, let's turn our attention now to the UVA Cavaliers because it was ugly in Charlottesville on Saturday. I made the trip up to Charlottesville to see Tony Elliott and the Cavs take on Mac Brown. Maybe the last time Mac Brown is in Charlottesville, and UNC wins it big, 41-14. Anthony Calandria, 16 for 28, had 2 picks. One was a pick 6, which was kind of the deciding factor in this one. He was sacked over 7 times. I think he got sacked 8 or 9 times in this game. It was tough for UVA. They finished the game with just 7 rushing yards, and they're on a bye week this week, and it's perfect timing. Before we get too far into the UVA here, let's check out the highlights from what was going on there in Charlottesville. A pretty good atmosphere. I got to give credit to UVA fans. I've given them kind of a hard time here on the nightcap that they haven't really been supporting a team that started the year 4-1. But it was a pretty good crowd on hand on Saturday. This was not ruled a touchdown. It was pretty close. UVA would start the game out. They go up 3-0. You wonder if this game's different if they get 7 points there to start the game. UNC immediately responded with a touchdown of their own, and it was 7-3 in a flash of an eye. UVA re-got the ball, went down the field again, got 3 more points, and that was really all they got going in the first half. They didn't score a touchdown until late and garbage time in the second half. UNC was able to run the ball. They were able to pass the ball. UVA got some pressure on UNC, but they weren't able to run the ball. 7 yards in this game is all UVA's been able to rush. Matt Schaub was in attendance. Pretty cool to see him back on campus and being celebrated. It was cool. We got to talk to him for a moment. Great guy. They honored him with an award. One of the greats. UNC would then they were just able to move the ball with ease. UVA didn't tackle well in this game. They didn't cover well. It was really ugly game from the Cavaliers as they fall 41-14 against UNC, a team that kind of looked like they'd given up on the season a couple of weeks ago. And UNC comes into town and really hands UVA a beatdown. It was ugly. Virginia started the season 4-1. They might not win another game. They've lost 3 straight games. The remaining games on their schedule are SMU, Pittsburgh, Virginia Tech. I should just look this up, but it's going to be a tough end of the season for the Virginia Cavaliers. I think they already played Clemson, lost to them last week. Notre Dame, is the one I'm forgetting. They play Pittsburgh, Notre Dame, SMU, Virginia Tech. I don't see UVA winning a single one of those games. So we started the year 4-1. It looked like the Cavs were going to be a shoo-in to at least go to a bowl game, maybe even compete for an ACC championship. And then you go on the road to Clemson, you kind of get embarrassed. You come home for homecoming against UNC, you get embarrassed. And it was the middle of the game that was the problem. UNC scored 2 touchdowns right before halftime. You come out of the halftime break, they get the ball back. Omarion Hampton, another touchdown. That's what you just saw. And then this is when it kind of felt like, all right, at least we're building something. UVA drives down the field. They get into the red zone. Calandria finally looked like he had time to throw, and then you get into the red zone, and you throw a pick, and the big boy runs it 80 yards the other way for a touchdown, and that's a wrap on the game. And that's what happened. It's like the second the Cavaliers got any momentum, it just went south. especially with the pick six here. And that's when the fans started leaving, and it was like, man, what has happened to our season? The Cavaliers start the year 4-1, and they're probably going to finish the year with 7 straight losses. They have a bye week this week, and then they hit the road for Pittsburgh, a team that I think will probably take down SMU. They'll be rolling. Pittsburgh's going to be playing possibly for an ACC championship. It was cool to see Mac Brown and Tony Elliott have that nice embrace. They obviously have a long history together, and after the game, he mentioned that Mac Brown thanked him for some of the letters that UVA players wrote when they lost a player the other week. And we'll get to that sound here in a second. But the Cavaliers fall to UVA 41-14, and now you're kind of shell-shocked by how poorly the Cavaliers played against a game that they had to win if they wanted to win a bowl game or get to a bowl game, because getting one win in these next 4 weeks is not going to be easy. And Tony Elliott was defeated after the game. This is what he had to say in his post-game press conference.
Staff, I did not do a good job of having it. But, I mean, I owe an apology to the administration. Guys got an opportunity, and they got to be ready. But that starts with me, so I have to make sure that I have them prepared and ready to go to be able to compete.
Disappointing loss for UVA. And I think I saw online a lot of calls for maybe Tony Elliott to get fired, that this, he's got to win some games or we should be done with him. Tony Elliott inherited a program that did not have a lot of talent on the roster. The recruiting for UVA has been really impressive. He's been getting in-state guys. A lot of our best athletes here in Central Virginia have been committing to UVA. I don't think the Cavaliers should give up on Tony Elliott. I think that this is a bigger rebuild than I think fans wanted it to be. I know that it's now been 2 years without much success, and it's looking like the season is probably going to end with 7 straight losses. I really think Tony Elliott is building something in UVA. I think the recruiting has been impressive, and I think there's a lot of talent that he's been able to bring in that will be there. I just don't think it's complete yet. And you see the 4-1 start and you get excited, and now you're more disappointed with how the season has gone. But to give up on Tony Elliott, I'm not buying that at all. I disagree with what I've been seeing online from fans. I think Tony Elliott is building something. I think it's going to take time. I think it really is. You got to get a couple of years of his guys getting in there, understanding what their role is, and you got to get some buy-in from the fan base. And right now, it's not going that way. That was an embarrassing loss. I agree with that UVA had to put up a better fight against North Carolina, a team that has struggled to stop anybody this season. And UVA scored their lone touchdown in garbage time with Tony Muskett. I will be interested to see if they go to Tony Muskett against Pittsburgh. He's now come in twice and immediately had spark, and the offense immediately looked like they were better last week when Tony Muskett came in against Clemson, and then in the second half when Tony Muskett came in this past week. I think a lot of people thought Muskett was going to be the starter coming into the season. So it'll be interesting to see if they open up that quarterback battle, if they stick with Calandria. The reason that they stuck with him as long as they did against UNC, Tony Elliott said, was because his ability to run away from the rush was why they kept him in there, kind of pointing towards the lack of depth on the offensive line and how much have they struggled. And that was evident as well. The guy had no time to throw the ball. So disappointing loss for UVA. The end of the season is going to be ugly. There's no other way to put it. They have a really, really tough schedule. Pittsburgh, Notre Dame, SMU, Virginia Tech. I mean, I'll be stunned if they win one of those games. But it's a process, right? We heard it with, with the 76ers. Trust the process. I don't think that it's time to push Tony Elliott out of town. I think he's building something. I don't think it would be wise to kick my man out of there, because I think he's done a really good job, especially with recruiting and what they've been able to bring in. I think it's just going to take a couple of more years, and we'll see if UVA has the patience for that, especially with what's probably going to happen with the basketball team this year as well. Not a good time to be a Cavaliers fan this month, that's for sure. You're probably ready for November to start already. All right, let's turn our attention to the Richmond Spiders, because they win their 6th straight. They go on the road to Bryant, which is in Rhode Island, I learned this past week. Richmond gets a big win, 41-14. All 41 points of the Spiders' points came in the first half. Same thing that we saw against Delaware. I'm excited to talk with Coach Russ Huseman tomorrow to ask about that second half, if they're cool with just running the clock out, or if he wants to see more offense. But what a day for Camden Coleman, 15 for 16, threw for 4 touchdowns. Our Highland Springs prospect, Aziz Foster-Powell, finally got back in the game after missing a couple of weeks due to, I think it was like team rules or something. 12 carries for 76 yards. Zachary Palmer-Smith, he had 68 and a score. Nick DeGennaro has been incredible the past couple of weeks. 7 receptions, 162 yards. Richmond's rolling, 527 yards of offense. They host Townsend this Saturday. Townsend's 4-4, but they did beat William & Mary, which was kind of the surprise of the CAA this season, because William & Mary is always so talented. But Richmond, 41 points in the first half alone. They win their 6th straight. I mean, they're at end of season form. I mean, I think they're ready for the playoffs now. I mean, I know they still got some work to do with William & Mary, Townsend, and company, but I mean, the Spiders are rolling, and I'm excited to see what they can do in the postseason, because there is no doubt about it that I think they're the best team in the CAA, and they looked like it on the road against Bryant. And Bryant's not the best team in the world, but to kind of see this offense come to life and the defense play well as well is pretty cool. All right, let's get to the big talk that we're all excited to talk about, the Commanders' miracle over the Bears. What an ugly game. This game was not fun to watch. Everyone was excited to watch this game. Jaden Daniels versus Caleb Williams, the number 1 overall draft pick versus number 2 overall draft pick, and then we didn't see a touchdown until the 4th or late in the 3rd or 4th quarter. Caleb Williams only completed 10 passes in this game, which is something I did not realize until I was looking at the box score today. He did not play great. Did lead a couple of touchdown drives there at the end of the game. But the big talk, of course, was the last play. Hail Mary falls into the hands of Noah Brown. And first regulation walk-off touchdown winner for the Commanders since at least the merger is what they put online. They couldn't find when the last time it happened. Might have been the first time ever, but at least since the 1970s. So a historically dramatic win for the Washington Commanders, and they are rolling. And we'll bring in our web producer here, Will Gonzalez, talk about the game a little bit. Will, did you see it live? I mean, this thing was awesome.
So I did not have the opportunity to watch the game, but I did watch what I would say would be what might be the most significant highlight of this entire NFL season.
Yeah.
The Bears corner, I don't know who it is, but he was a little distracted during the that passing play. Jaden Daniels had the chance to
let's
throw
call
it
this
down
guy
for,
out. Tyreek Stevenson. If you didn't see the clip, he's walking back to play prevent defense, and he's talking to the fans. He's talking trash. He's waving his hands. The play starts. He's still waving around, and you can see Bear fans literally pointing for him to turn around. He turns around. It's his guy, the receiver that was all the way to the right of the formation, standing right in front of Stevenson, was the one that ends up catching this ball. Stevenson, funny enough, runs over mid-play after he's been celebrating. He's the defender that tipped the ball, and then it lands in Noah Brown's hands. And I mean, I was talking with my buddies trying to figure out the last time something like that happened. The Packers, I think, was the last one back when Aaron Rodgers played for the Packers. But I mean, it was about as dramatic as it gets.
Yeah, absolutely. And it definitely had a big impact on Noah Brown's stats for the game. 3 receptions, 73 yards. That is Randy Moss numbers.
Yeah, and that was like, I think it was like 60 yards on the final play, right? So
yeah, I believe it was such a long pass that it increased his average for the game to 24.3 yards per reception. So pretty significant catch for him. Definitely one for the highlight reel.
Yeah, I mean, that was such a lame game. I mean, I was watching it, and I was like, I was expecting so much more out of this game, and then you get a Bears great drive with 30 seconds left, and then they leave the Commanders with the opportunity to pick up a quick chunk play, and then sets up the Hail Mary attempt. Jaden Daniels does a good job evading, and it was a significant win for playoff pictures, for how you think of the Commanders. They struggled in the red zone today, or on Sunday, and they moved the ball with ease, which I thought was interesting. That they were throwing the rock all over the place. I think Jane Daniels finished with over 300 yards passing, but they couldn't get into the end zone. And so that's something I think if you're a Washington fan, it's like, let's hang our hat that we got to win, but they got to figure out that red zone offense as well in this thing. But
the corner's not going to have his back turned to the play on all of the plays.
It's definitely you're happy to get the win. What I love seeing was Dan Quinn celebrate at the end. Mm-hmm. I've really been a fan of Dan Quinn, and he's come in and he's got his second chance at being a coach, and he's got the Commanders rolling. I mean, it's been exciting. Any other big news from the weekend, Will?
I want to mention Joey Rodriguez, the legendary VCU point guard who led the team to the 2011 Final Four. I think every VCU basketball fan can agree that the 2011 Final Four was a very significant moment for the history of the program, and it would absolutely not have been possible without Joey Rodriguez. And I think 13 years later, we're finally giving his recognition in the rafters. So it'll be good to see that, and hopefully it's a omen for the near future for the team.
Yeah, they've posted an interview they did with him today, and he seems like such a great guy. Obviously, that's way before my time here in Richmond, but seeing him talk about the team and the honor it is for him to be have his name and his jersey in the rafters seemed to mean so much to him. But I did a little more research on that 2011 team because I wasn't that familiar with it. You think that was incredible what VCU was able to do? I mean, they didn't. A lot of times you see these teams get to the Final Four because of other upsets, and they didn't have to beat great teams. VCU beat the gauntlet. Obviously, they beat Kansas in the region final. But listen to these team names that they had to beat to get there. They had the play-in game. It was like the first year, I think, that there was the play-in game in Dayton, and they beat USC, Southern California, one of the biggest brands in all of NCAA basketball or football for that matter. And then round one, they have to play Georgetown, the legendary Georgetown. They beat them by 19 points. Then they go on the road or not go on the road. In round two, they played Purdue, one of the biggest brands in basketball. Beat them by 20 points. Then they played Florida State, one of the biggest brands there are. They beat them, and then of course they played against Kansas in that championship game and beat them to go to the Final Four. I mean, what a magical run. Shaka Smart, just unbelievable what he was able to do and that team. And VCU celebrates that so much, and I think they should, because it was just incredible. I think what's interesting, and I did not realize, was Kansas beat Richmond to get to that game. How awesome would that have been to see a Richmond versus VCU game in the Elite Eight? And that would have been pretty cool. And then obviously they lost to Butler, who then Butler lost to Connecticut that national championship season. But pretty cool stuff. I'm excited to see that. I think it's against Elizabeth City State on November 29th is when they're going to do that. So definitely going to be in attendance for that. We'll have full coverage from that, but pretty exciting stuff. Anything else from the weekend you can think of? Bronny James played in his first game. Played 3 minutes. We talked about that last week. Yeah. I don't think that. Did he play in that next game? Do you know? I know he went on the road trip with them.
Yeah, I was trying to read about his contract. I think that he has a two-way contract, but it's not a regular two-way contract. I'm not really sure what the differences are between his contract and a normal two-way contract, but.
Yeah, I don't think we might not see him again. He did not play in the second game. I think he went on the road trip, but I mean, there's a lot of guys on the roster that don't play, so it's not that crazy. But
yeah,
what has been interesting, Dalton Connect, I covered him when I was in Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
when he played for Tennessee, and he was, just incredible to watch play. He's another rookie on that team. I think he's going to be a big impact for the Lakers, but we won't get into too much Lakers talk. We could talk Wizards, but I think that's a waste of time. I'll be surprised if the Wizards win 20 games this season. I don't think they've won a game yet, but yeah, tough start of the season for the Wizards. We probably won't be talking much Wizards, but we will be talking a lot of ECU and Richmond basketball, Virginia basketball, Virginia Tech, as basketball season kind of progresses here soon. It'll be interesting. Any hot takes for the basketball season? Well, I know you're a big college basketball fan.
We're just over a week away from the beginning of the regular season, and so I really can't say.
Hard to say.
Yeah, I will say if I do have a hot take, it is the thing that captured my attention with NBA basketball over the weekend was the D Wade statue, and truthfully, it has me wondering if we're ever going to see a good statue.
Yeah, I can't. It almost looked like a joke.
Yeah,
I was like, all right, where's the other statue? Yeah, that looks nothing like him. But his take on it was cool. I think he said it was like an artist. It's an artistic version,
surrealist.
Yeah, I don't know. What I did like was how big it was. You think back that Allen Iverson statue that came out a couple years ago. That thing was like the size of a teddy bear, and this thing.
I know. Yeah.
I'm glad it's got the size, and what a great ambassador for the game. And he is the Miami Heat when you think of the Heat. I mean, it is Dwayne Wade, so that's pretty cool to see. Mm-hmm. Great guy. But all right, well, let's go ahead and wrap things up here. We've been talking for a while. Here for another episode of Nightcap. Thanks for tuning in. Next week we will not have a show. It's election night. So don't expect to see a nightcap next Tuesday. Obviously, the VCU Rams, they kick off their season on Monday. I'll be at the Siegel Center. We'll have full coverage from VCU's home opener against Bellarmine. Excited to see the Siegel Center and the Havoc Nation and all that. So I'm really excited to see VCU in person for the first time. And then Richmond, they have their home opener on Wednesday against Mount Olive, which is a Division II team in North Carolina. So that counts as a real game. That's not an exhibition. That is their home opener. So we'll have full coverage from Robbins as well. So excited for the basketball season to start. It starts next week. And, of course, next time we're on the Nightcap, we'll talk a little basketball. But thanks so much for tuning in today for another episode of 8 Sports Nightcap. We'll see you next week. Or the week after next. Next week, we will not have a nightcap due to election night. But that's going to wrap things up. For Will Gonzalez, I'm Nolan Knight. We'll see you in 2.